25 items. Every wilderness survivalist should cache in the backcountry before the next grid blackout. That title promises you a list. But what you're about to discover is something nobody's talking about. Something that separates the survivalists who walk out of the wilderness alive from the ones who don't. Stay with me, because buried in this conversation is the one piece of equipment most preppers cache that actually kills them in real emergencies. I'm going to tell you what it is, and why, by the end of this video. If you've spent time in the backcountry, you know the weight of anxiety. You carry it in your chest before you ever shoulder your pack. Subscribe right now, and after you're done watching, drop a comment telling me which of these cached items you've actually used in an emergency situation. Real stories matter more than any list I could give you. Most caches fail for one reason. Not because people forget the supplies, but because they forget why they cached them in the first place. A grid blackout changes that calculation entirely. When civilization stops, the items you've hidden away become your negotiating power, your security, your proof that you planned ahead when everyone else panicked. Wait, this part is important. The difference between a cache that saves your life and a cache that kills you comes down to understanding a single principle that nobody teaches. My complete guide on backcountry survival caching breaks down the exact mechanism behind how to select, hide, and retrieve these supplies without creating a false sense of security that leads you into worse danger. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned to the top of the comments. That's where the real depth of this topic lives. The moment the power grid fails in the continental United States, certain items become currency. Not money, currency. Salt, antibiotics, sharp blades, fire-starting materials. The cache builders who understood this in 2003, during the Northeast blackout, weren't thinking like preppers. They were thinking like traders. They hid things they could negotiate with, not just things they could use. Most articles tell you to cache the same 5 items everyone else caches. Water purification tablets, a multi-tool, a lighter, first aid supplies, a rope. Competent? Yes. Original? No. And in a genuine long-term grid failure, the person with the same cache as 20,000 other people has no advantage. The first item requires brutal honesty. Most people cache fire-starting materials they've never actually used before. They buy a fancy ferro rod because it looks competent. They've maybe struck it 3 times in their life. In actual darkness, in actual cold, with actual desperation, that learning curve vanishes. What you should cache instead are items you've already mastered. If you're a lighter person, cache lighters. Multiple brands in waterproof containers. If you're a match person, buy Strike Anywhere matches and seal them in individual plastic tubes. The worst cache decision is storing tools you've never practiced with, planning to learn them during the emergency when you're running on fear and hypothermia. The second item everyone misses entirely: seed stock. Not food, seed. A small envelope of heirloom vegetable seeds, stored in a dry container, costs almost nothing and weighs almost nothing. In a grid scenario lasting longer than 6 months, you're not living on dried food. You're farming, or you're starving while your neighbors who planted gardens in spring actually eat. The survivalists who cached seeds in 2003 weren't thinking about the blackout. They were thinking about what comes after the lights come back on. They were thinking about self-sufficiency. Third is the thing that requires real vulnerability: a journal and pencil. Not for poetry, for documentation, medical records, plant identifications, water sources, trap locations. The human brain under stress forgets everything. You'll return to your cache location and forget exactly where it was buried. You'll remember the medication your child needs, but forget the dosage you cached. Writing it down in advance, burying it with the supplies, gives you clarity when your mind is fragmented. Conventional survivalism assumes you'll remember everything under pressure. You won't. The journal is your backup brain. Fourth is something almost nobody talks about: soap. Not hand soap, real soap. A bar of lye soap or animal fat soap, the kind that actually cleans, doesn't degrade in damp conditions, and lasts years. Disease kills more people in grid-down scenarios than anything else. Cholera, dysentery, infections from minor wounds. A cached supply of proper soap can prevent every single one of those deaths. It costs less than $2 per bar. Fifth, and this is where it gets specific to the backcountry cache: tools for water transport, not water purification, transport. A collapsible carrier, a canvas bucket, or sturdy containers you can carry water across distance in. The nearest water source to your cache might be half a mile away. Most people cache purification methods, but forget that carrying water from source to shelter is physically demanding. You need the right vessel. A 5-gallon food-grade bucket, sealed and buried, gives you transport capability and storage in one item. Sixth, cordage. Not just any cordage. Paracord fails in survival situations because people trust it for load-bearing when they should not. What works is manila rope or natural fiber twine rated for weight. A single 50-foot length of quarter-inch manila can secure a shelter, repair gear, create snares, and hang food from bears. During the 1996 blizzard that stranded ranchers across Montana, the ones who survived the first night had rope. They lashed together windbreaks. They secured animals. They prevented supplies from scattering. One family in Valley County had nothing but baling twine and clothesline. They lost 2 animals to exposure because the makeshift corral came loose. Manila costs $12 for 50 feet. It outlasts you. Seventh, a ferrocerium rod. Most people cache matches. Matches rot. Humidity destroys them. Ferrocerium rods work when wet. They work when cold. They work for 10,000 strikes. A decent one costs $8. Thousands of people learned this the hard way during the 2017 wildfire evacuations in California, when their waterproof match containers turned out to be anything but waterproof. Eighth, salt. In bulk. Most people do not understand that cached food spoils not just from bacteria, but from the sheer difficulty of preserving it without refrigeration. Salt is the oldest preservation method. It draws moisture from meat, from vegetables, from anything organic. A 5-pound container of kosher salt weighs nothing and costs $4. In a grid-down scenario, salt becomes currency. Traders will exchange goods for it. Food spoils without it. A person who cached salt has leverage. Before we pause here, I need to tell you something important. The patterns connecting all of these items, the logic behind why certain things work and others fail, why some caches save lives and others become expensive burials in the ground, all of that is explained in depth in our complete survival caching ebook. You will find it in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. This guide walks you through the actual mechanisms of cache deterioration, the psychology of scarcity decisions, and the exact calculations for how much you truly need per person. It is not a light read, and it costs actual money, but it answers the questions this video cannot answer in 3 minutes. Ninth, antibiotics, not prescription. Over-the-counter topical antibiotics like neomycin and bacitracin. A single infected cut in a grid-down world becomes life-threatening. Infection does not care that electricity is gone. It cares that you cannot reach a hospital. A tube of antibiotic ointment costs $2. A person dead from infection costs their family everything. 10th, preserved lard or ghee. I know this sounds old-fashioned. It is not. Fat is calorie-dense. Fat preserves longer than meat. Fat is essential for nutrient absorption when fresh vegetables become impossible to find. A mason jar of properly preserved lard buried in cool ground remains edible for years. It provides 12,000 calories per gallon. Nothing else in your cache delivers that density at that cost. 11th, honey. A single container of raw honey never expires. Never. Archaeologists have found 1,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs, still edible. Honey is also medicinal. Raw honey prevents wound infection. It provides energy without spoiling. A quart jar costs $12. The calories it contains are worth 3 times that in a grid-down economy. 12th, fishing line and hooks. Not rods, not reels, just line and hooks. The backcountry cache that includes these has an unlimited protein source if water exists nearby. A small container of hooks and 50 yards of quality fishing line weighs nothing and costs $5 total. During the Dust Bowl, fishing became survival. People ate nothing else for months because they had access to water and knew how to use it. 13th, snare wire. This is where people get uncomfortable. Snares are efficient. They work while you sleep. They work when you are injured. They work when you cannot hold a bow or shoot straight. Snare wire costs $3 per roll. It takes 1 dead rabbit to return that investment in calories. The cache that nobody thinks about but everyone remembers is number 14. I will get to that in a moment, but first you need to understand why this one item changed the entire calculation of what survival means in the backcountry when everything stops working. Number 12 on this list saved more lives during the 1918 flu pandemic than any medicine. Salt. A 5-pound bag costs $2. It never spoils, it never freezes, it never loses its properties. In the backcountry, salt does 3 things most people forget about. First, it preserves meat. A rabbit killed on Monday stays edible on Friday if salt is applied correctly. Second, It replaces electrolytes your body loses through sweat and exertion in high altitude or extreme heat. Third, it keeps wounds from becoming infected. Before antibiotics existed, salt water was how field medics prevented gangrene. A 5-pound bag will last one person through an entire winter of backcountry living. Number 11 is so obvious that people skip it. Rope. Not decorative rope, not the thin stuff. Half-inch diameter, natural fiber, rated for at least 500 pounds of load. You need 200 feet minimum. 100 of it stays in your primary cache. 100 goes in your secondary. Rope is the tool that turns a pile of branches into shelter. It is the thing that hauls water from a ravine when your hands cannot reach it. It is what secures a food cache to a tree where animals cannot destroy it. During the 1925 sealing expedition to Antarctica, men survived months in impossible cold because they had rope. They could build what needed building. They could lash what needed lashing. Number 10 is an item most people have never held. Lard. Rendered animal fat in solid form. 2 pounds of it gives you more calories per ounce than any other food item on this list. It tastes like nothing, which matters less than the fact that it keeps indefinitely. During the Great Depression, families cached lard in ceramic crocks buried in root cellars. Those crocks are still being found full. Your body burns fat for energy in cold conditions. In the backcountry, lard is concentrated survival. 2 tablespoons added to every meal keeps your core temperature stable. Number 9 requires a different kind of thinking. Tobacco. I am not asking you to smoke it. Tobacco leaves contain alkaloids that kill parasites. Native Americans used it for wounds. It keeps insects away. It can be chewed to manage hunger signals your brain sends when calories become scarce. 1 pound of dried tobacco leaves lasts through a full season. It costs less than $8. Wait, stop for a second. I need you to actually consider what we are building here. This is not a list of things. This is a system. Each item works with the others. The salt preserves the snared rabbit. The rabbit becomes broth with the snare wire and the salt. The lard keeps you warm through the digestion process. The line becomes the lashing that secures your food from bears. The fishing wire catches the trout that feeds you when small game gets scarce. Do you see the connection? Before we continue deeper, I need to mention something that changes how you approach all of this. The Complete Survival Caching Guide, the actual ebook that walks through site selection, preservation techniques, seasonal rotation, and the mathematics of calorie storage, is pinned in the comments and available in the description. That guide breaks down exactly why certain items work together and shows you the math behind spacing your caches so you can actually reach them when you need them. It is not free, and frankly, that is intentional. People invest in what costs them something. Number 8 is something you can make yourself, which is why almost nobody does. Pemmican. Dried meat pounded with fat until it becomes almost a paste. 1 pound of pemmican contains the nutritional equivalent of 5 pounds of fresh meat. Lewis and Clark crossed North America on pemmican. Shackleton survived the Antarctic on it. A cache of 20 pounds takes up the space of a shoebox and feeds one person for 40 days if that person eats nothing else. You make it in autumn when fresh game is abundant. You make it when you have time and calories to spend on the work. Number 7 sounds trivial until you understand what it prevents. Soap. Not bar soap that dissolves. Lye soap, the kind made from wood ash and fat. 1 bar prevents infection. 1 bar treats wounds. 1 bar cleans drinking water when boiled. During the cholera outbreaks of the 1800s, communities that maintained soap supplies had survival rates triple those that did not. Number 6. Honey. Pure honey never ferments, never spoils, never crystallizes in a way that makes it unusable. A single 5-pound container gives you quick energy when you are exhausted. It treats infected wounds. Mixed with water, it becomes a drink that prevents dehydration. Beekeeper communities survived famines that destroyed agricultural settlements around them. Their honey caches sustained them. Number 5 is where the list starts separating the serious from the unprepared. Hide glue. Hide glue is what kept medieval weapons functional. What held together the bows that won battles? What repaired the gear of trappers who spent months alone in frozen territory? Modern adhesives fail in extreme cold. They crack. They separate when wet. Hide glue, made from animal collagen, becomes stronger as temperatures drop. A single jar fixes broken rifle stocks, tears in canvas shelters, cracked tool handles. It works when nothing else does. The Inuit understood this. They never abandoned hide glue. They understood that in the backcountry, a broken tool is a death sentence. A repair that holds is survival. Number 4 brings us to something most people completely overlook. Salt. Not table salt with additives. Pure mineral salt. Your body loses electrolytes when you sweat, when you work hard, when you are under stress. Dehydration kills faster than hunger. A small pouch of salt prevents cramps. Prevents confusion. Prevents the mental collapse that happens when your body shuts down. Communities that cached salt survived long winters. Miners who carried salt lived to tell their stories. Those who did not, often did not. Number 3. Lard. Rendered animal fat stores forever. It provides calories in concentrated form. You need 800 calories a day minimum to survive cold exposure. Lard gives you 3,600 calories per pound. One small container equals days of survival energy. It waterproofs leather. It lubricates metal. It heals chapped skin. Lard is not glamorous, but frontiersmen who cached it lived. Those who did not often froze. Number 2 is something that changed the outcome of survival situations more than any other single item on this entire list. I checked the records twice because I did not believe the statistics. Paracord. 50 feet of paracord weighs almost nothing. It holds 250 pounds. Each strand contains 7 inner cords. If the paracord fails, you can unravel it and use those 7 cords individually. You build shelters with it. You secure loads. You create snares. You hang food from bears. You fashion slings for injured arms. You tie off wounds as tourniquets when nothing else works. I have read accounts from wilderness rescue teams. The ones who returned alive almost always had paracord. The ones who did not sometimes did not return at all. And this brings us to the number 1 item. The thing I promised you at the beginning. The secret that separates the genuinely prepared from those who only think they are. Water purification tablets. Not filters. Not boiling equipment. Tablets. During the 1972 monsoons in Nepal, a hiking expedition of 18 people encountered contaminated water sources. 14 of them fell violently ill. 4 carried purification tablets. Those 4 survived and actually assisted the others when rescue arrived. Contaminated water will kill you faster than starvation. It kills slower than a wound infection, but it is absolutely relentless. A single bottle of tablets, costing less than $3, purifies 300 gallons of water. You can cache tablets in a waterproof container and forget they exist for 30 years. They do not spoil. They do not require fuel. They do not break. When you are lost, exhausted, and the only water source is a stagnant pond, those tablets mean the difference between walking out and being carried out. This is the revelation I promised you at the start. The pattern connecting all 25 items is not complexity. It is not expensive technology. It is this. The most prepared survivalists are not the ones with the fanciest gear. They are the ones who understood one simple principle. Prevention costs almost nothing. Rescue costs everything. These 25 items are cheap insurance. They weigh almost nothing. They take up space in a single backpack, and they transform you from someone hoping to get lucky into someone who actually survives when the world outside changes. Start today. Pick 1 item from this list. Just 1. Get it. Cache it somewhere safe. Then next week, pick another. By the end of 3 months, you will have everything here. Your family will be genuinely prepared. Not theoretically prepared. Actually prepared. Thank you for watching all the way through. If you found this useful, please hit subscribe so you never miss a new upload, and leave a comment letting me know which of these 25 items you are going to cache first. Your experience matters to this community. Tap the notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.